The nature of art and creativity. Part 1. Why do we give visual form to our emotions, thoughts, and imaginings? The urge to gesture, draw, dance, speak, sing, write, and build are an important part of what makes us uniquely human. The desire to produce and appreciate what we define as art has been a powerful motivator throughout the course of human existence. Art is not separate from us. It comes from our ordinary and extraordinary human insights, emotions, and experiences. The visual arts include drawing, painting, sculpture, film, architecture, design, and more. Visual forms are often the most effective means of conveying certain ideas and feelings because, in essence, art, like music, is a unique language. As the American painter Edward Hopper once said, quote, "If I could say it in words, there would be no reason to paint," end quote. To start off, let's first discuss what great minds have said and thought about the term art. Art, which seems to encompass so much, can be a challenging term to pin down. Philosophers, art historians, critics, and writers have long wrestled with attempting to understand the concept of art. The early 20th century British philosopher Robin George Collingwood stated that art is the imaginative expression of human emotion, which on the surface sounds reasonable, as we probably all have a general understanding of this statement. But now we have a definition problem. What exactly constitutes imaginative? We may all have a very different idea as to what is considered imaginative. The same goes for words such as expression or even human emotion. What exactly constitutes human emotion? If we can't agree on what these terms mean exactly, then how can we accurately determine the concept of art? Many decades later, the philosopher George Dickey would address this early theory of art by shifting the emphasis to the institution or the art world. Dickey's institutional theory suggested that museums and galleries and those entities working within them have the power to dictate what is and what is not art. That an object can only become art in the context of the institution known as the art world. For our discussion, we will adopt the loose definition of art as the visual expression of an idea or experience formed with skill through the use of a medium. A medium is a particular material along with its accompanying technique. Media is the plural form of the word. Here we have the German artist Gerhard Richter using the medium of oil paint and a giant squeegee to make his large green painting. For thousands of years, artists have used the traditional medium of watercolor and a brush. Many sculptures from antiquity only survive today because they were carved with a mallet and chisel into an almost indestructible medium, stone. Using the medium, elephant grass, artists in Bolgatanga, Ghana create beautifully colored baskets with electric colors. Today, some artists use what we call mixed media, which means that they are combining a variety of materials and processes. Creativity. Human imagination or creative thinking is the fundamental wellspring from which all art, science, technology, and indeed civilization itself originate. However, what precisely do we mean when we invoke the term creativity? Creativity is essentially the ability to bring forth something new that has value. Even though we are focusing on artistic creativity, creativity can be found in most human activities, and contrary to what you may or may not believe about yourself, you are a creative being by your very nature. Trained and untrained artists. First, let's talk about outsider art, which is art produced by those with no formal training outside the established channels of art exhibitions. The art of children, psychiatric patients, and prisoners who create art without the conventional structures of art training and art production is often categorized as outsider art. Here we have the work of French artist Jean Dubuffet, who in 1964 started to collect artworks he considered to be free from societal constraints. This was termed art brut, or raw art, which was another term for outsider art. Also, under the umbrella of trained and untrained artists, we have folk artists, art of people who have had no formal academic training, but whose works are part of an established tradition of style and craftsmanship. From Mexico, we have the brightly colored folk art of fantastical creatures known as alebrijas, which were originally created in 1936 by Pedro Linares Lopez in Mexico City after he suffered some feverish hallucinations from some sort of sickness. The first ones were made of paper mache and cardboard. Later, they spread to Oaxaca, Mexico, where they were then made out of wood. The alebrijas are thought to scare away bad spirits or perhaps protect the home. I own several of these myself, and they are visually striking and quite charming. Another example of folk art is the art of quilting. Imagine that no one in your family had ever attended art school, yet your great-grandmother who made quilts teaches her daughter. Your grandmother, who then teaches your mother, who then finally teaches you. You belong to a family tradition of quilters. Now let's say your beautiful quilts get noticed by an institution that wants to exhibit or sell your works, and your exhibit gets written about. Then you will probably be described as a folk artist working out of a tradition. Deriving from traditions of art from the Catholic Church are the small devotional paintings called retablos. The term retablo is from the Latin retro tabula, or behind the altar, originally referring to the large paintings depicting saints, Jesus, or the Virgin Mary, which usually hung behind altars in Catholic churches. Devout Mexicans commission retablos as votive offerings as a vow or gratitude for divine intercession. These votive offerings influenced the very personal work of the famous Mexican artist Frida Kahlo. This one here says, quote, "The misfortune happened to me on May 28, 1929. Being dragged along by the waters of the Rio Grande in El Paso, Texas, I saw myself in such great danger that I invoked Our Lady of San Juan de los Lagos with a true heart. And at that moment my salvation came from a friend who, bravely fighting the fearful waters, was able to pull me to the riverbank. In thanksgiving for so apparent a miracle, I make public the present retablo, San Francisco de Rincon, January 29, 1932, Domingo Segura." Also falling under the umbrella of trained and untrained artists is children's art. Children are endlessly creative. They constantly take creative risks that most adults shy away from for fear of failure. In fact, most young children create images that are more mental constructions rather than records of visual observations. Why do we love children's art? Because they have a refreshing sense of life and unique expressions in their distortions. In fact, you could say that children's drawings are so wrong that they're right. The famous Spanish artist Pablo Picasso, when asked why he didn't teach his children how to paint, responded that, quote, "When I was their age, I could draw like the great Raphael, the great Renaissance master. But it took me a lifetime to learn to draw like them now," end quote. What do you think he means by that? Pablo Picasso was considered a child prodigy, and at the tender age of 13 attended the School of Fine Arts in Barcelona, Spain, where his father, an art teacher, taught. He was essentially a 13-year-old in a class with 21-year-olds. These works were created when Picasso was between 14 to 16 years of age. This is an image of Picasso's father. The middle is his mother, and the image on the right is a figure model that happened to be a matador in bullfights who was modeling for the class. Now let's look at two different works. This painting, called Communion, is around 5 foot by 4 foot in size and was created when Picasso was around 15 years of age. Now this image on the right is also a Picasso painting. It's called First Steps and was created when Picasso was around 61 years old. Here we see the work as a teenager compared to his work as a mature adult. Picasso once said, quote, "Art is a lie that makes us see truth," end quote. How can we apply this statement to the painting, First Steps? The painting on the right is obviously a lie because humans don't really look like this. These strange distortions are invented. But what is the truth, or rather the poetic truth that Picasso is trying to show us? Have you ever seen a young child take its first steps? It's a very wonky and awkward moment as a child struggles to find balance. Look at the adult hovering over the child. She's like a protective umbrella, a sheltering tree, or even a force field perhaps, shielding and observing the child. Even in the momentousness of this event, can you detect a subtle hint of sadness in the mother's face as the child fearlessly walks out into the world to become an independent person? I suspect that some of this may be the truth, or rather the poetic truth, that Picasso is revealing in this work. Many years ago, I visited my sister, who just so happens to teach 3rd and 4th graders. They're very cute and adorable at this age. In my sister's class before the winter holidays, the young kids were drawing snowmen. Once they finished, they had free time. I was playing with the kids when I noticed one little boy in the back who was very carefully coloring most of his paper black. All the other children had finished and were playing, and this one little child was working very intensely. Finally, at the end of the class, he presented it to his teacher and said, "I'm finished." My sister then asked, "Where's your snowman?" And the little boy said, "That's him at the bottom. He melted." Children appear to be natural artists. They are fearless in their creative risk-taking. This concludes part 1 of our discussion of the nature of art and creativity. Thank you.